Sir, we're going to have to charge you $50,000 for non-compliant grass length, an unauthorized mailbox shade, and what appears to be an excessively quirky garden gnome. That's what the glossy notice declared, stamped with the HOA seal and featuring a legit watermark of a bald eagle clutching pruning shears. I read it 3 times, standing barefoot in my driveway, coffee in one hand, sheer disbelief in the other. At first, I figured it was a gag from my sister, who once shrink-wrapped my entire kitchen as a prank. But Nada's was real, and that's when it hit me. I was about to stumble into a battle I didn't start but was damn sure going to finish. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been living my quiet life on the outskirts of Willow Ridge Estates, a neighborhood that looked like a mashup of a utopian suburb and a home decor magazine spread. I'm Ethan, a structural engineer who spends more time patching up bridges than fretting over my blinds hue. I snagged this house a decade ago when the previous owner, a retired road builder, offered me a steal of the deal. It came with a yard, a garage workshop, and one oddball detail in the deed. I owned the main road into the community. Back then, I didn't think twice about it. The road was fine, the neighbors kept to themselves, and there were no strings attached until a new HOA crew rolled in last year, led by the infamous control freak and oxygen hog, Margaret Voss. Margaret rocked reflective sunglasses, cruised in a half-paid-off Lexus SUV, and had a voice that could strip rust off a tanker. Her passion wasn't knitting or Pilates, it was domination. And for reasons I couldn't fathom, she'd pegged me as her top target. The letter arrived on a Monday, hand-delivered by a nervous kid who looked like he'd been bribed with a gaming voucher to get my signature. He shoved it at me, mumbled, "Good luck," and bolted like I was contagious. I tore it open, skimmed the first line, and nearly gagged on my coffee. $50,000 in fines for overgrown shrubs, non-standard lawn ornaments, and get this, failure to certify my deck chairs. The real kicker? I never signed up for their HOA. I had no memory of agreeing to let these jokers dictate my lawn or my gnome, who, by the way, is named Rufus and has more charm than Margaret could ever dream of. Still, I tried the polite route. I strolled down to the HOA officia beige trailer masquerading as a legit headquarters and asked to speak to the boss. Naturally, Margaret was there, flanked by 2 board members who looked like they'd been plucked from a low-budget cop show audition. She didn't even glance up as I walked in. "Oh, Mr. Carter, finally ready to own up?" she sneered, clicking her pen like a judge about to ban me from yard work forever. "I don't think I'm in your HOA," I said coolly. "My property's not in the original covenants, and I've never signed anything to join." She flashed a grin, the kind you'd see on someone who enjoys flattening kittens, and said, "If you live here, you follow the rules. That's how we keep this place pristine. Except I don't legally have to," I countered, slapping my deed copy on her desk. She peeked at it, snorted, and waved it off like I'd handed her a fast food coupon. "Rules are rules," she said. "Contest the fines if you want, file a petition. We'll review it next quarter." That's when it clicked. This wasn't about grass or gnomes or mailbox tones. It was about power. Margaret wanted to make me her whipping boy. Too bad for her. She'd picked the wrong guy to shove. I left that trailer, drove straight to the county clerk's office, and within 2 hours had a certified deed proving clear as a beacon in an HOA haze that the road into Willow Ridge Estates was mine. The old owner had paved it himself in the 70s and never handed it over. The HOA had been coasting on it for nearly 20 years. No easement, no rent, nada. I sat in my truck, staring at the paper, grinning like I'd struck gold because I basically had. Something snapped in me then, but the good kind of snap, the one that comes when you've been pushed too far and realize you don't have to take it. I didn't just want to push back. I wanted to make a move so bold, so absurdly legal, and so maddening that Margaret would rue the day she mailed me that bill. So I rang my Uncle Ted, a retired builder and prank legend, and said, "Hey, remember that toll booth you rigged up for your driveway in '99? Can we do a sequel?" He laughed so hard I had to pull the phone away. "You for real?" "Dead serious." By morning, we were plotting. We nabbed an old toll booth frame from a defunct theme park, wired it with a license plate scanner, and fitted it with a solar-powered gate arm. It was glorious, petty, and 100% legit. Before setting it up, I ran it by a lawyer who nearly choked on his latte when he saw my deed. They fined you 50 grand while piggybacking on your road for free? Yep. Want to charge back rent? Not yet. Toll first. That weekend, while the HOA prepped their annual conformity stroll, I was pouring concrete bases and running cables. I posted signs a week ahead. Private road toll starts Monday. $3 per entry. HOA board $15. I even offered free resident decals if folks sign a waiver saying I wasn't under HOA rule. Pure genius. Monday dawned, and I stood by the booth, coffee in hand, Rufus the gnome at my side, watching Margaret's Lexus screech to a halt. Her jaw dropped. She honked. I waved. She rolled down her window and barked. "You can't do this." "Oh, I can," I said, tapping the laminated sign. "Rules are rules, right?" Her horn wailed like a wounded swan as the first car pulled up behind Hera Green, sedan driven by Mr. Grayson, the ex-science teacher who always wore flip-flops with socks. He squinted at the booth, then at me, then at the sign, "Private road toll begins today." Margaret flapped her arms like she was signaling a plane, but it only fueled the chaos. I leaned against the booth, sipping coffee, as the scanner beeped and logged each car. Residents who'd grabbed the not under HOA stickers the day before sailed through free, waving or tossing me snacks like I was a roadside vendor. Margaret, though, was trapped in her own fury, refusing to budge. The honking piled up behind her. "You're blocking the road, Margaret," I called out chipperly. "People have lives. This is illegal," she shrieked, storming out of her car like an enraged duck. "You can't charge for a neighborhood road." "Check the county records," I said, holding up the deed she'd ignored for years. "I own it. Always have. I was fine sharing until you hit me with a $50,000 tab for gnomes and unapproved deck pillows." She jabbed a manicured finger at me, practically buzzing with rage. "You're extorting us." "That's rich," I shot back, nodding at the camera above the booth, coming from someone who finds $75 for a mailbox being 2 shades off beige. It's all recorded, permitted, and optional, no trespassing without paying. That was the day Margaret fully unraveled. She ranted about lawsuits, codes, unity, and society's collapse, but one by one, residents rolled past her, paying the modest toll $3 or $15 for HOA brass. That $15 wasn't random. It was what she'd find Mrs. Lopez for a non-compliant Thanksgiving wreath last fall karmic math. By afternoon, I checked my toll app and grinned. Dozens of cars logged, plus notes slipped under the booth door. One said, "Finally, someone fought back." Another, "Bless you, Toll King," with a batch of brownies. The next day, the HOA retaliated with a compliance check. Margaret and her lackeys Tim, who looked like a smug substitute teacher, and Sheila, who wore HOA logo tees to barbecues, marched onto my land uninvited. My driveway cam pinged. Suspicious activity. I watched live as Margaret pointed at my shrubs. Sheila scribbled like a maniac, and Tim measured my hedges with a ruler he'd brought from home. When I stepped out, they were snapping pics of my shed. "Can I help you trespassers with anything?" I asked loud for the camera. Margaret spun around. "We're doing a routine inspection for new violations." "I'm not under your thumb," I said, flashing the waiver sheet scene. "I've asked you off my property. Last chance." She huffed, waving her clipboard like it was holy writ. "We have charter authority." "And I have a police report ready for trespassing and harassment," I replied. Smile for the lens. Margaret snarled. Sheila muttered, "Maybe we should go," and they bailed. But I knew she'd be back. She wasn't the type to lose and slink away. She'd burn it all down first. Sure enough, next morning, flyers were taped to every mailbox. Community alert. Unauthorized toll, booth dangerous individual running illegal operation. At the bottom, a link to Margaret's blog, where she'd pinned a 2,000-word screed calling me a suburban scourge and a modern toll pirate. I posted a screenshot to the neighborhood Facebook group with $50,000 in fake fines versus $3 toll who's menace. The comments erupted. Half the residents backed me, sharing tales of petty fines and Margaret's reign. A few even vowed to ditch HOA dues until the board flipped. Margaret deleted posts like a dictator in a digital purge, then hiked dues to fund legal counsel, which only fanned the flames. I upped the ante. Anyone who legally quit the HOA got a lifetime toll pass. Within 48 hours, neighbors lined up at my booth, pins ready to break free. The cherry on top? Some guy in a jacked-up truck tried to dodge the toll by cutting across my grass unaware I'd sunk tire spikes disguised as garden stones. Huh. 2 flats, a howl of shock, and a sign. Smile, you're on camera, pay at booth. That clip went viral on the local subreddit. I became toll titan, road ruler, Ethan the enforcer. Margaret's name turned into a verb. Don't get Margaret Ed. But even with the tide turning, she wasn't done, not even close. Her next play shook the hood and unearthed a decades-old secret, escalating our spat into all-out war. It started with an unmarked van parked at the neighborhood's edge at dawn. It looked like a work rig ladder rack, utility survey decals, but something felt off. It had been near my booth 3 days straight, and I'd spotted Margaret yakking with the driver, clipboard in hand. My gut screamed trouble, and I'd learned to trust it when Margaret was involved. By noon, my mailbox bulged with a fat legal envelope, a cease and desist from the HOA's new lawyers, claiming my booth disrupted neighborhood function, violated communal rights, and me favorite fostered hostility and revenue theft. From my road, I laughed so hard I nearly fell over, but this wasn't a bluff. Margaret had rallied enough faux outrage to push the board into small claims court, demanding I dismantle the booth, pay for emotional distress, and stop using HOA infrastructure as if my road was theirs because she said so. The nerve was almost admirable. Instead of freaking out, I poured a bourbon, sat on my porch, and called my lawyer, Lisa no-nonsense type who once won a case against a deli for shorting her sandwich meat. She whistled low after reading the letter. This is desperation. Also, they're begging for a countersuit. Within hours, she filed one, not just contesting their claim, but demanding 18 years of back rent for unauthorized road use, adjusted for inflation $187,000. She attached the deed, maps, maintenance logs, and a city engineer's note confirming the road's private status. It was a legal sledgehammer. Next morning, the neighborhood chat blew up. Someone, not me, leaked the filings. Residents were stunned. Most had no clue the road wasn't HOA turf. Some were pissed they'd been duped. Others were just impressed. One post read, Margaret fined me $40 for a crooked birdhouse, and this guy slaps her with $187K. I owe him a beer. The next days were mayhem. Margaret held late-night huddles with Tim and Sheila, who were clearly drowning. I knew because I flew my drone originally for roof checks, now my sky spy. From 100 feet up, I saw her jabbing at maps and papers on her patio, lit by mosquito torches like a cartoon villain. Their big idea? A bypass road through city-owned green space. She'd hired a shady crew to carve it out, skipping permits. When they showed up with paint and tape, I called zoning, sent drone clips, and watched the city shut it down in 20 minutes fines for Margaret, crew sent packing. Still, she pivoted to shame, mailing flyers, the toll terror's true plot, claiming I was profiteering and holding folks hostage, complete with a toll revenue graph like I was building a cash castle. She spun my countersuit as an assault on unity. This time, I didn't fight back, the neighbors did. Sick of her stunts and woke to their dues, funding her spiral. They launched a petition to oust the board, armed with proof the HOA had no claim to my road and Margaret was bleeding them dry. I tossed in a perk. Petition signers got a gold lane, toll sticker priority access, no waits, plus free Saturday coffee from my booth's new mini cafe. Rebellion's better with caffeine. In 5 days, over half the hood signed. Cornered and unhinged, Margaret called an emergency meeting, ranting about intruders, lawbreakers, and refusing to be toppled by a toll gremlin and his gnome lackey, meaning Rufus, now a local icon with a knitted scarf someone made him. Her meltdown streamed live, hitting Facebook like a bomb. Comments flew. She said, Toll gremlin, I'm dead. Triple toll? Worth it. Margaret needs an off-planet break. By week's end, She was crumbling residents mobilizing, city eyeing her, HOA funds torched on lawyers. But instead of bowing out, she went full rogue, and that's when the twist hit hard. She wasn't just grasping at power, she was about to break the law big time. It started with tire tracks fresh, deep ones beside my booth, found at dawn while I restocked my coffee nook, espresso, donuts, and toll gremlin roast. I thought it was a lost driver, but the tracks circled back to the booth's security panel wires snipped, plate camera ripped off, and tossed like trash. This wasn't random. It was calculated. The footage cut out at 3 a.m. Backup generator cleanly disabled pro work. I stared at the sliced cables, a chill settling in. This was vengeance. Margaret had jumped from petty fines to felony territory, and I sensed worse was coming. That afternoon, Officer Ramirez called the cop from the early toll spat. "Ethan, report of heavy gear on your road last night. You hire anyone?" "Nope." "Well, we found a backhoe behind lot 19, no permits, no markings. Looks like someone tried digging where that bypass was planned. Checking city cams now, but heads up." I hung up, eyeing lot 19 owned by Margaret's brother. It clicked. If they couldn't build legally, they'd do it dirty and dodge the fallout. Now, though, it was criminal trespassing, vandalism, unpermitted digging. The HOA meeting was that night. Uninvited, I went any way time to drag her shadow games into the open. The community center hummed with whispers as I walked in. Margaret, clutching her binder of doom, glared like I was a pest she'd already squashed. "Ethan Carter," she spat, "you're not HOA and don't belong here. I'm here as the road owner you've exploited for 20 years. I cut in, and lately, the target of sabotage and trespass." "Explain the backhoe, Margaret." She faltered, no snarky comeback this time. Tim piped up. "We thought we had clearance to ease traffic from your booth." "Funny," I said, pulling out a paper. "City says no permits, no go. Officer Ramirez says your crew hit my land again." I dropped the docs on the table like a loaded gun. Margaret's face went crimson. "This is harassment. You're ruining us with your tolls and sham suits." But the crowd wasn't biting, not after weeks of booth coffee, public filings, and her viral freakout. Mrs. Kim, a 30-year resident, stood. "You're the liar, Margaret. You fined my son $150 for a skateboard ramp, and now you're sneaking roads on land you don't own. We're done." Voices piled on, fines for wind chimes, flower pots. Kids chalk art a dam of pin-up gripes bursting. Margaret's lip quivered, but she yanked a letter from her binder, waving it like a trophy. "I've got legal backing. My brother's a judge. He'll shut your toll scam down." Silence. I tapped my phone, beamed a screen image via Bluetooth. A 2008 article, disbarred judge jailed for fraud. Same last name, same mugshot. "Your brother's been out of law for 17 years, busted for fake tickets. Time travel's not an option." Gasps rippled. Margaret clutched her binder like a shield. Tim and Sheila, trading panicked looks, they'd bet on a sinking ship. Then Officer Ramirez walked in with a partner and a detective. "Margaret Voss, you're under arrest, trespassing, property damage, fund misuse, conspiracy for illegal construction." She gaped, mute for once. "You're kidding," she croaked. "No," Ramirez said. "Come easy, or we add resisting." She scanned for allies, none stepped up. Even Sheila bailed, hands up. As they let her out, her glare burned into me, pure venom. But I hadn't taken anything, she'd lost what was never hers. The room buzzed in stunned quiet. The tyrant was downer, so I thought. The HOA, gutted but alive, had one last trick. A loophole in the original covenants, one Margaret never touched, but her minions might just dare to use. The week after her arrest was eerie too still, like the calm after a tornado. Gossip swirled. How long she'd be out? If she'd worm back? What had happened to the HOA, sans its dictator? Most wanted a fresh start, but I wasn't popping champagne, yet Margaret's stench lingered like stale milk. The HOA wasn't dead. Tim and Sheila clung to its bones, scrapping for scraps of clout like vultures on roadkill. I figured they'd slink off after the public smackdown, but shame wasn't their style. One foggy Monday, a notice was taped to my booth. Emergency infrastructure annexation. citing an old charter clause letting the board seize adjacent assets in an access crisis my road. I laughed for a solid minute, then called Lisa. She wasn't laughing. This could stick if the road was ever HOA turf, she said, scanning the dusty charter. It wasn't. They have to prove it was, she said. Unless they've got something hidden, she stopped, but that night, I found out they did. An anonymous email hit my inbox, no text, just an attachment from local I-22 on a throwaway server. I opened it warily, expecting a meme, but it was a scanned easement dated 5 years back with my signature. Except I'd never signed it. My gut sank. This was Margaret's doing her cronies, a fake claiming I'd ceded road rights to the HOA. It was sloppy typos, a signature like a toddler's doodle, but if they'd filed it unchecked, it'd be a legal mess. Lisa nearly yelled, "This is fraud. Go public now." So I did. I printed the forgery, marked it up with red ink, and pinned it to a board by the booth like a crime scene display. Neighbors' gawky jaws dropped, heads shook. Even toll skeptics flipped to my side. Then I called Channel 5. By dusk, they were filming me explaining how the HOA faked a claim, stole my road, and muzzled the guy who fought back. The anchor loved its summed-in signatures, suspenseful music. It aired as Toll Booth Rebel or HOA Scam. Willow Ridge Showdown. Tim and Sheila stayed mum, but pressure mounted. Next day, a letter came, not a threat, but a deal. They'd drop all road claims and kill the HOA if I dropped my suits. Lisa said, their toast push for damages. But I was done. I wanted quiet. I countered, no suits, no fines if they apologized publicly, paid my legal costs, and signed over permanent road rights. 3 days later, I stood on the commons, coffee in hand, as Tim read a shaky apology, Sheila staring at the grass. We, ex-board of Willow Ridge HOA, admit we overstepped. Ethan Carter, road owner, was wrongly targeted. We dissolved the board and apologized to him and all residents. No cheers, just a collective exhale. Good enough. Weeks later, the hood transformed. Gnomes sprouted everywhere, mailboxes went Technicolor, one guy stuck a wind turbine on his roof just because. My booth stayed, upgraded free weekend coffee, mini events, and a teen DJ's auto-tune Margaret quotes blasting as EDM. Rufus got a pedestal, Row Guardian, rights champ. A kid pedaled by one Saturday, asking, "Toll's still real?" I grinned. "Only if your HOA resurrects." He laughed and biked off. The war ended not with fanfare, but with liberty, neighbors, and the best payback, thriving while your foe fades. Sipping coffee under a Margaret Free Zone banner. I got it sometimes. Toppling a despot just takes a toll booth, grit, and a gnome named Rufus.